The warning alarm screamed through the trading station, and Taman looked up from his coffee. He was sitting in the pilot's lounge waiting for his cargo ship to finish refueling. It was supposed to be a quiet morning, just another routine stop on another routine supply run. Through the large window, he saw something that made his blood run cold. A massive transport vessel was spinning out of control near the docking platforms. Smoke poured from its hull. Debris flew in every direction like deadly rain. Hull breach on the Royal Transport, the station computer announced in a calm voice that didn't match the chaos outside. All personnel evacuate Docking Bay 7 immediately. Taman stood up, his coffee forgotten. The Royal Transport. That meant important aliens were on that ship. Probably the Velrathi, since this was their sector of space. He watched as station security scrambled to respond, but they were too slow. Everything was happening too fast. Then he saw it. A small emergency pod ejected from the dying ship, tumbling wildly through the debris field. It was tiny, child-sized. The pod's lights were flashing red, which meant its systems were failing. Nobody else seemed to notice it. All the security teams were focused on the main ship, trying to stabilize it before it crashed into the station. The small pod drifted further away, spinning helplessly toward the dark of space. Taman's feet were moving before his brain caught up. He ran out of the lounge and down the corridor to the emergency equipment lockers. His hands shook as he pulled on a spacesuit. He'd done emergency spacewalks before, but never like this. Never in the middle of a disaster. "What are you doing?" a station worker shouted at him. "There's a kid out there," Taman said, sealing his helmet. "In a pod. Nobody's going for them. You're crazy. The debris field will kill you." Taman didn't answer. He grabbed a magnetic tether and clipped it to his belt. Then he stepped into the airlock and hit the emergency release. The void of space opened before him, silent and deadly. Taman activated his suit thrusters and launched himself toward the small pod. It was about 300 meters away, but it was drifting fast. He had to reach it before it got too far from the station. Chunks of metal flew past him. A piece of hull plating the size of a car tumbled by. So close he could have touched it. Taman twisted his body and fired his thrusters to dodge. His heart hammered in his chest. Every instinct screamed at him to turn back, but he could see the pod now, closer. Through its small window, he saw movement inside. Someone was alive in there. A warning flashed on his helmet display. The pod's oxygen was at 15%. Whoever was inside had maybe 10 minutes of air left. Maybe less. Taman pushed his thrusters to maximum. His fuel gauge dropped rapidly, but he didn't care. Speed was everything now. He stretched out his hand as he got closer, fingers reaching for the pod's grab handle. He missed. The pod spun just out of reach, and Taman sailed past it. No, he couldn't fail. Not now. He fired his side thrusters and twisted around, using precious fuel to reverse his direction. This time, his fingers caught the handle and held tight. The pod's window was cracked. Through it, Taman saw a small alien child. She had pale blue skin and large dark eyes filled with terror. She was Velrathi, probably no more than 7 or 8 years old. Her little hands pressed against the window. The pod's systems were completely dead. The emergency beacon wasn't even working. No wonder security hadn't spotted her. Taman tried to access the pod's controls, but nothing responded. The whole thing was fried. He looked at his own suit's display. His oxygen was good for another hour. The pod's oxygen was at 9% now. The child inside was breathing fast, panicking. She'd use up what little air remained even faster. Taman made a decision that he knew was insane. He unsealed the emergency port on his suit and connected it directly to the pod's air intake valve. Then he manually overrode his suit's safety systems. His own oxygen supply began flowing into the pod. His helmet display immediately flashed red warnings. His air supply would now last maybe 30 minutes instead of an hour. If rescue didn't come in time, they'd both die out here. The little girl's eyes went wide as fresh air rushed into her pod. She stopped panicking and stared at Taman through the cracked window. He gave her what he hoped was a reassuring smile, even though she probably couldn't see it through his dark helmet visor. Now came the hard part. Getting back to the station, Taman fired his thrusters and began pulling the pod with him. It was heavy and awkward. His fuel gauge dropped to 50%, then 40%. The debris field was still dangerous. He had to move slowly and carefully, even though every second counted. A massive piece of the destroyed ship tumbled toward them. Taman saw it coming and tried to maneuver, but the pod's weight made him sluggish. The debris was going to hit them. At the last second, Taman fired all his thrusters at once and pushed the pod down with all his strength. The debris missed them by inches, but the maneuver cost him. His fuel dropped to 20%. His oxygen was at 15% now, the same level the pod had been when he found it. Taman could feel his breathing getting harder. Each breath took more effort than the last. The station was only 50 meters away now. So close, but his thrusters sputtered. 10% fuel, 5%. Then nothing. They were drifting now with no way to control their movement. Taman looked at his oxygen display. 8%. His vision started to blur at the edges. His hands felt numb. Then something grabbed onto him. Strong hands in security suits. They'd finally noticed him. The security team pulled Taman and the pod toward the station airlock. Everything felt distant now, like he was watching it happen to someone else. The airlock doors closed. Air rushed in. Taman's helmet was removed and he gasped, sucking in deep breaths. His lungs burned. Station medics were suddenly everywhere, checking him with scanners and speaking words he couldn't quite understand. Other medics were opening the pod. The little Velrathi girl spilled out crying but alive. She looked around frantically until her eyes found Taman. Even as the medics tried to check her, she pulled away and ran to him. She grabbed his hand with her small blue fingers and wouldn't let go. She spoke in her own language, words Taman couldn't understand. But he didn't need a translation to know she was saying thank you. Taman tried to say something back, but his vision went dark. The last thing he felt was the child's hand holding his as he collapsed on the cold station floor. He'd done it. She was safe. That was all that mattered. Everything else could wait. Taman woke up in the softest bed he'd ever felt. For a moment, he thought he was dreaming. The sheets were smooth like water, and the room smelled like flowers he couldn't name. Soft blue light came from the ceiling, gentle on his eyes. This wasn't the station's medical bay. That place had been all white walls and harsh lights and the smell of disinfectant. This room looked like something from a luxury hotel. No, more than that. It looked royal. He sat up slowly. His body ached, but not as badly as he expected. Medical monitors beeped quietly beside the bed. Through a large window, he could see stars and a beautiful blue planet below. He wasn't on the station anymore. He was on a ship. A very fancy ship. The door opened with a soft sound and 3 figures entered. 2 were guards, tall and imposing in silver armor, but it was the 3rd figure that made Taman's breath catch. She was Velrathi, like the child he'd saved, but fully grown. Her skin was a deeper blue, and she wore robes that seemed to shimmer with their own light. Jewels decorated her forehead and neck. Her eyes were the same dark color as the little girl's, but they held the weight of authority. This was someone important, someone powerful. She looked at Taman for a long moment, then spoke. Her voice was musical, lilting in a language he didn't understand. One of the guards stepped forward and held up a small device. A translator. "I am Queen Mion of the Velrathi Empire," the device said in perfect human standard language. "You saved my daughter's life." Taman's mind went blank. Queen. He'd saved a queen's daughter. He'd saved a princess. I just did what anyone would do, Taman managed to say. The queen's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. "No, most would not have done what you did. Most would have calculated the risk and chosen safety. You chose differently." She moved closer to his bed, her robes trailing behind her like water. "My daughter, Princess Isul, is the heir to our empire. She is everything to me, everything to our people. And you, a stranger, risked your life without hesitation to save her. Is she okay?" Taman asked. That was all he really wanted to know. For the first time, the queen's stern expression softened slightly. "She is well. Thanks to you. She has been asking to see you, but I wanted to speak with you first." "Okay," Taman said carefully. "I'm glad she's safe. And I appreciate the nice medical room, but I should probably get back to my ship." "I have cargo runs scheduled and—" "You do not understand," the queen interrupted gently. "You cannot simply return to your life. Not yet." Something cold formed in Taman's stomach. "What do you mean?" The queen gestured, and one of the guards brought forward a chair. She sat down, somehow making the simple action look elegant. In Velrathi culture, when someone saves the life of royalty under certain circumstances, a bond is formed. "We call it the life debt of the throne." "A life debt?" Taman repeated. "You risked your own life while saving Princess Isul. You shared your heir, your resources. You could have died. This creates a sacred bond in our culture. Until this debt is properly satisfied, you are bound to our family. Taman felt like the air was being sucked out of the room again, just like in space. Bound for how long? That depends, the Queen said. It could be months. It could be years. The debt must be satisfied according to our traditions. But I don't want any debt, Taman said, trying to keep his voice calm. I didn't save her to get something in return. I just wanted to help. Can't we just call it even? The Queen's eyes hardened slightly. To refuse the debt would dishonor both our families. It would also complicate Princess Isolde's position in the line of succession. Other nobles would use it against her, claim she owes a debt that was never properly honored. She is only a child. I will not let politics hurt her. Taman ran his hands through his hair. This was crazy. He was just a cargo pilot. He had a simple life, a small ship, and routes that he knew by heart. He didn't know anything about alien royalty or sacred debts or court politics. What exactly would this debt mean? He asked quietly. I propose that you serve as Princess Isolde's guardian and cultural advisor, the Queen said. You would live in our palace, protect her, and teach her about humans and other species. Our people have been isolated for too long. We need to understand the galaxy better, and you can help with that. Live in your palace? On your planet? Yes, for how long? I propose a trial period of 1 standard year, the Queen said. After that, we can reassess the debt and determine if it has been properly satisfied. 1 year. Taman thought about his ship, his roots, his freedom. 1 year away from all of that. But he also thought about the little girl in the pod, terrified and running out of air. He thought about her hand holding his as he collapsed. What if I say no? He asked, even though he suspected he knew the answer. Then you would create an interstellar incident, the Queen said bluntly. Our culture takes these matters very seriously. To refuse would be seen as an insult to our entire empire. I do not think you want that. She wasn't threatening him exactly, but the message was clear. He didn't really have a choice, and after a year, Taman asked. After a year, if the debt is satisfied, you would be free to return to your life. You would have the gratitude of the Velrathi Empire, which is worth more than you might think. Taman looked out the window at the planet below. It was beautiful, he had to admit. Blue and green and covered in clouds. Nothing like the barren rocks and space stations he usually saw. He thought about refusing anyway, about insisting on his freedom. But that would hurt the little girl who'd held his hand. That would make her a target for political games, and Taman found he couldn't do that to her. 1 year, he said finally. But I'm not good at formal stuff. I'm a cargo pilot, not a diplomat. I am not asking you to be something you are not, the Queen said, and he thought he saw relief flash across her face. I am asking you to be yourself. That is what my daughter needs. Honesty, directness, someone who sees her as a child first and a princess second. Taman nodded slowly. Okay, 1 year. But I want my ship kept safe. When this is over, I'm going back to my life. Your ship will be maintained and ready for your return, the Queen promised. She stood up and suddenly her formal manner softened again. Thank you, Taman. You have no idea what you have given me, what you have given our people. Before Taman could respond, the door burst open. A small blue figure rushed in, dodging past the startled guards. Princess Isolde ran straight to Taman's bed, her face breaking into a huge smile. Taman, she said in heavily accented human standard. She'd been practicing. The Queen said something sharp in Velrathi, probably telling her daughter to be careful, but Isolde ignored her mother and grabbed Taman's hand, just like she had on the station. Thank you, she said in human standard. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Taman looked at her happy face, then at the Queen's soft expression as she watched her daughter. He thought about his small empty ship and his quiet, lonely cargo runs. Maybe 1 year wouldn't be so bad. You're welcome, kid, he said gently. And that was how Taman's new life began. The palace was impossible. That was Taman's first thought when the royal transport descended through the clouds. Towers of crystal and stone reached toward the sky, connected by bridges that seemed to float on air. Gardens hung in the spaces between buildings, full of plants that glowed with soft light. It looked like something from a dream. Beautiful, yes? Princess Isolde said beside him, proud of her home. Yeah, Taman admitted. It's beautiful, beautiful and completely alien. Nothing like the simple stations and colony worlds he was used to. As they landed, Taman felt his nervousness growing. He was a cargo pilot about to live in a palace. This was insane. The palace staff lined up to meet them. There were dozens of Velrathi in elegant robes, all bowing as the queen passed. They looked at Taman with open curiosity. A human in the royal palace. That probably didn't happen often. A tall Velrathi male stepped forward. He was older than the queen, with darker blue skin and scars on his neck. His robes were military style, and he carried himself like a soldier. His eyes swept over Taman with obvious disapproval. "This is Lord Deho," Queen Mian said. "He is my chief military advisor and commander of the royal guard." "Welcome," Deho said in human standard, though his tone suggested he meant the opposite. "I hope you will not find palace life too complicated for someone of your background." Taman recognized an insult when he heard one, even a polite one. "I'm sure I'll manage," he said evenly. Deho's eyes narrowed slightly, but he bowed to the queen and stepped back. Taman had made his first enemy in the palace. That was probably a record. The queen showed Taman to his quarters. They were bigger than his entire ship. The bedroom alone was twice the size of his cargo bay. There was a sitting room, a bathroom with a pool-sized bath, and a balcony overlooking the gardens. "This is too much," Taman said. "This is appropriate for someone in your position," the queen replied. "You are Princess Isul's guardian now. That comes with certain accommodations." She explained his duties. He would spend his days with the princess, teaching her about human culture and other species. He would accompany her to lessons and meals. He would be trained in palace security protocols and Velrathi combat arts in case of danger. "Combat arts?" Taman asked. "You must be able to protect her properly," the queen said. "Lord Deho will oversee your training personally." "Great. The guy who already hated him would be teaching him how to fight." What could go wrong? The first week was overwhelming. Taman kept getting lost in the endless corridors. He couldn't read the Velrathi script on the signs. He accidentally insulted a noble by using the wrong hand gesture. He ate with the wrong utensil at dinner and caused a minor scandal, but Princess Isul made it bearable. She followed him everywhere, chattering in her mix of Velrathi and human standard. She showed him her collection of artifacts from different worlds and made him tell her stories about Earth and space stations and cargo runs. "Tell about the time with the space pirates," she demanded. One afternoon in her room. "I already told you that story 3 times," Taman said. "Tell again." So he told her again about the time pirates tried to board his ship, and he'd outsmarted them by venting cargo bay air and making them think his ship was decompressing. She loved it, her eyes wide with excitement. "You are very clever," she said seriously. "This is why Mother chose you." The queen checked on them often, more than Taman expected. She would arrive unannounced and watch him interact with her daughter. Sometimes she asked him questions about human thinking, about how humans made decisions or solved problems. "Why did you save Isul?" she asked one evening when the princess had gone to bed. They were sitting in the palace gardens under strange stars. "You said you just did what anyone would do." "But that is not true. Many would not have acted." Taman thought about it. "I don't know. I just saw a kid in trouble. I didn't think about it being smart or stupid. I just acted." "Interesting," the queen said softly. "In Velrathi culture, we think carefully before we act. We calculate risks and outcomes. Sometimes I think we think too much." "Sometimes thinking too much means you don't act at all," Taman said. She looked at him with those dark eyes. "Yes, exactly. The combat training started in the second week. Lord Deho was a harsh teacher. He had Taman training with the royal guards every morning before dawn. The guards were all bigger than Taman, stronger, and had trained their whole lives. "You are weak," Deho told him after Taman was knocked down for the 10th time. "How do you expect to protect the princess?" Taman got up, breathing hard. "I'm learning. Not fast enough, but Taman was stubborn. He'd survived in space for years, dealt with broken ships and dangerous situations. He could handle this." He started watching the guards carefully, learning their patterns. Velrathi fought with grace and power, but they were predictable. They followed forms and traditions. By the 3rd week, Taman stopped trying to fight like them. Instead, he fought like a human. He was smaller, so he used speed. He was weaker, so he used surprise. He ignored the traditional forms and did whatever worked. During one training session, he was facing a guard twice his size. The guard attacked with a powerful overhead strike. Instead of blocking it properly, Taman ducked, rolled between the guard's legs, and swept his feet. The guard crashed to the floor. The training hall went silent. That move was not in any Velrothi combat form. Deho's face was unreadable. Again, he ordered. By the end of the month, the guards were respecting Taman even if Deho wasn't. They started calling him Quickstep because of his unpredictable movement. Some even asked him to show them human techniques. Palace life became a routine. Morning training, breakfast with Isul, lessons and activities during the day, evening meals with the royal family. The staff grew used to him. Some even seemed to like him, but not everyone. Lord Deho watched Taman constantly. He questioned every decision Taman made regarding the princess's safety. He made subtle comments in court about humans being unreliable or inappropriate for royal service. One evening, after a formal dinner, Deho cornered Taman in a corridor. "You do not belong here," he said bluntly in human standard. "The queen disagrees," Taman replied. "The queen is blinded by gratitude. You saved her daughter. That does not make you fit for palace life." Deho stepped closer. "You are a cargo pilot playing at being noble. Eventually you will make a mistake. And when you do, I will be there. Is that a threat?" "It is a fact." Deho turned and walked away. Taman stood in the empty corridor, troubled. Deho wasn't just unfriendly. He was actively hostile. That could be dangerous. But when Taman returned to his quarters, he found Princess Isul waiting outside his door. She was supposed to be in bed. "Isul, what are you doing up?" She held up a small carved figure. "I made this for you. In craft lesson today, it was a spaceship. Rough and childish, but clearly made with care. It looked a bit like his cargo ship. So you do not forget," she said seriously. "Your ship, your home, when the year is done." Taman took the carved ship, feeling something tight in his chest. "Thank you. It's perfect." She smiled and hugged him quickly, then ran off to her room before the guards could scold her for being out of bed. Taman looked at the little carved ship in his hands. Deho was right about one thing. He didn't belong here. This wasn't his world. But for now, this little girl needed him. He could handle palace politics and hostile advisors for 1 year. He'd survived worse, probably. 3 months passed like water through fingers. Taman no longer got lost in the palace corridors. He could read basic Velrothi script and understand simple phrases without a translator. The staff greeted him by name, and the guards treated him like one of their own. Princess Isul had attached herself to him completely. She insisted he sit with her during lessons, read her bedtime stories about Earth's oceans and mountains, and play games in the gardens. She called him Taman Shi with her adorable accent, and the whole palace had started using the nickname. But it was Queen Mion who surprised Taman the most. She had started asking him to join her for private dinners. At first, she said it was to discuss Isul's education, but the conversations always drifted to other topics: philosophy, art, different approaches to leadership. "Tell me about human governments," she said one evening over dinner. They were alone on a terrace overlooking the city lights. "Your people have many different systems, yes?" "Yeah," Taman said. "Democracy, republics, some monarchies, even a few corporate governments. We can't agree on much." "And you think this is good?" "It's messy, but maybe messy is better than everyone thinking the same way." Mion considered this, her fingers tracing patterns on her glass. "The Velrothi have one empire one way. It has kept us stable for thousands of years. But stable can also mean stuck." "Why are you asking me these things?" Taman said. "I'm just a cargo pilot. I don't know about ruling empires." "That is exactly why I ask," she said softly. "Everyone else tells me what they think I want to hear. You tell me what you actually think." Their eyes met across the table, and something passed between them that Taman didn't quite understand. Something that made his heart beat faster. He cleared his throat. "How long have you been ruling alone?" Her expression shifted, becoming distant. 3 years. My mate, Isul's father, died in battle against raiders from the outer sectors. Since then, I have carried the burden of rule by myself. That must be hard." "It is lonely," she admitted. "I make decisions that affect billions of lives. I can show no weakness, no doubt. The moment I do, there are those who would use it against me. Against Isul, like Deho?" Mion's eyes sharpened. "You have noticed his hostility. Hard to miss. He thinks I'm a mistake. Maybe he's right, he is not right." Her voice was firm. "Deho is a good soldier and a loyal advisor, but he fears change. You represent change, something new. something he cannot control. She reached across the table and touched Taemin's hand. It was a light touch, barely there, but it sent electricity through him. "You have been good for Isil," she said quietly. "And for me." I had forgotten what it was like to speak freely with someone, to not always be the queen. Taemin didn't know what to say to that. He was saved from answering by the arrival of guards with the next course of the meal. But Mion's hand lingered on his for just a moment longer before she pulled away. The following week brought the Festival of Lights, a major Velrathi celebration. The palace was decorated with thousands of glowing crystals. Nobles from across the empire attended, filling the halls with their elegant robes and important conversations. Taemin wore formal clothes that felt uncomfortable and too fancy. He stood near the wall during the grand ceremony trying to be invisible. But Princess Isil found him and grabbed his hand. "You must stand with me," she insisted. "You are my guardian." So Taemin stood beside the royal family as the queen gave a speech in Velrathi. He understood maybe half of it. Something about honoring the past and looking to the future. The crowd cheered at the appropriate moments. Then the dancing started. Nobles paired off in traditional formations, moving to music that sounded like wind chimes and deep bells. Isil pulled Taemin toward the dance floor. "I do not know how to do this dance," Taemin protested. "I will teach you." She was a patient teacher, showing him the basic steps. Taemin stumbled through it, feeling foolish. But Isil laughed with delight, and other dancers smiled at them kindly. A human trying to learn their dances. It was probably entertaining. When the dance ended, Taemin escaped back to the wall. He was getting some water when Daeho appeared beside him. "You make a fool of yourself," the advisor said coldly. "I'm making her happy," Taemin replied. "That's my job. Your job is temporary. You should not forget that." Before Taemin could respond, alarms blared through the palace. The music cut off. Guards rushed into the hall, forming protective circles around the nobles. "What's happening?" Taemin asked. But Daeho was already moving toward the queen. An explosion rocked the building. The crystals hanging from the ceiling swayed and some fell, shattering on the floor. Nobles screamed. More guards poured in, weapons drawn. Taemin's training kicked in instantly. He looked for Isul. She was standing frozen near the dance floor, terrified. Without thinking, Taemin ran to her, scanning for threats. He saw them. 3 figures in dark clothes pushing through the panicking crowd. They were moving purposefully toward the royal platform where the queen stood. Assassins. One of them saw Taemin shielding Isul. The assassin changed direction, heading straight for them. He had a weapon, something that glowed with deadly light. "A plasma blade. Get behind me," Taemin said to Isul. The assassin was fast. He came at Taemin in a rush, blade raised. Taemin had no weapon, just his training. He did what the guards had taught him and what his human instincts added. He dodged to the side at the last second, grabbed a heavy crystal from a nearby table and smashed it into the assassin's head. The assassin stumbled. Taemin kicked his legs out from under him and caught the falling plasma blade. He'd never used one before, but it seemed straightforward enough. Point the glowing end at the bad guys. The other 2 assassins had reached the queen. Daeho and the guards were fighting them, but one got through. He lunged at Mion with his blade raised. Taemin moved without thinking. He pushed Isul toward the guards and ran. He crossed the distance in seconds, threw himself between the assassin and the queen, and brought up the stolen blade. The assassin's strike hit Taemin instead of the queen. Pain exploded across his shoulder as the plasma blade cut through his formal jacket and into flesh. Taemin screamed but didn't fall. He swung his own blade wildly, driving the assassin back. Guards finally reached them, overwhelming the assassin. More guards secured the other 2 attackers. The threat was over in seconds, but it felt like hours. Taemin dropped the blade and fell to his knees, clutching his shoulder. The burn was agonizing, like fire inside his skin. His vision blurred. Mion was beside him instantly, her hands on his face. "Taemin, stay with me." "Is Isul okay?" he managed to ask. "She is safe, because of you." "Good," Taemin said, and then the pain dragged him down into darkness. He woke in the medical wing. Again. This was becoming a habit. His shoulder was bandaged and felt numb from medication. The queen sat in a chair beside his bed. Her face was composed, but her eyes were red like she'd been crying. "You should not have done that," she said quietly. "Couldn't let them hurt you. You nearly died. For me. That's the job, right? Protecting the royal family." "No," Mion said fiercely. "That is not your job. Your job is to teach Isil, to be her companion, not to throw yourself in front of blades meant for me. She reached out and took his hand, not the light formal touch from dinner. This time she held it tightly, desperately. In Velrathi culture, he'd learned, touching hands was intimate, reserved for family, for mates. I cannot lose you, she whispered. I have already lost too much. And Isul, she needs you. I need you. Taman looked into her eyes and saw something that made his chest tight. This was more than gratitude, more than respect. Miyun, he said softly, using her name without title for the first time. She leaned down and touched her forehead to his, a Velrathi gesture of deep affection. When the year ends, she said, I do not think I can let you go. Neither of them spoke after that. They just sat together, hands linked, both understanding that something between them had changed forever. Taman's shoulder healed slowly. The plasma burn had cut deep, and even Velrathi medicine couldn't fix it overnight. But he refused to stay in the medical wing. He returned to his duties with Isul as soon as he could stand without feeling dizzy. The assassination attempt had changed things in the palace. Security was tighter. Guards followed the royal family everywhere. And people looked at Taman differently now. He wasn't just the human who'd saved the princess once. He was the human who'd taken a blade for the queen. But the biggest change was between Taman and Miyun. The formal distance was gone. She found excuses to see him daily. Sometimes she joined his lessons with Isul. Sometimes she asked him to walk with her in the gardens. They talked about everything and nothing, and Taman felt himself falling deeper into something he knew was impossible. She was a queen. He was a cargo pilot. This couldn't work. But his heart didn't seem to care about logic. Isul noticed, of course. Children always notice these things. She started making comments about how her mother smiled more now, how she laughed at Taman's stories. The princess looked between them with knowing eyes that seemed too old for her young face. Do you like my mother? She asked Taman one afternoon during their lessons. Taman nearly dropped the book he was reading. What kind of question is that? A simple one. Do you like her? Of course I like her. She's your mother. She's a good person. That is not what I mean. Isul folded her small arms. I mean, do you like her the way father liked her? The way mates like each other? Taman didn't know how to answer that. Isul saved him by continuing, I think you do. And I think she likes you too. I see how she looks at you. Isul, I would not mind, the princess said seriously. If you stayed forever, if you became my father. I miss having a father. The words hit Taman like a punch. He knelt down to her level. I care about you very much. And your mother. But it's complicated. Why? Because I'm human. Because I'm not royalty. Because in a few months my year will be up and I'll have to leave. But you do not want to leave. It wasn't a question. Taman realized she was right. He didn't want to leave. Not the palace, not Isul, not Miyun. When had this place become home? When had these aliens become his family? The political situation grew tense as the year mark approached. Lord Deho and other conservative nobles began pushing for Taman's departure. They argued that the life debt had been more than satisfied. The human had served his purpose. It was time for tradition to return. They also suggested that the queen should take a new mate. A proper Velrathi noble who could help her rule and give Isul siblings. The royal line needed to be secure, they said. The queen couldn't remain alone forever. Taman heard these discussions through the palace gossip network. The staff liked him and kept him informed. Each time he heard about nobles discussing the queen's future mate, something dark and jealous twisted in his stomach. One evening, Deho confronted Taman directly. They met in the training hall and the advisor's hostility was now open. Your year is almost complete, Deho said. You will be leaving soon. That was the agreement, Taman said carefully. Good, because you have overstayed your usefulness. The queen has become attached to you. This is not healthy for her or for the empire. That's not for you to decide. Deho's eyes narrowed. I have served this throne for 30 years. I was here when the queen was born. I trained her mate. I held her when she wept at his funeral. I know what is best for her, and it is not a human who will leave her in the end. Maybe you should let her decide what's best for herself. She cannot think clearly about you. You saved her daughter. You took a blade for her. She feels gratitude and affection, but these are not the foundations for a true partnership. Deho stepped closer. You will leave when the year ends. If you care for her at all, you will not make this harder than it needs to be. Taman wanted to argue, but he couldn't, because Deho was partly right. The queen deserved someone who belonged in her world, someone who could truly help her rule, not a cargo pilot playing at being royal. The next day, Mion summoned Taman to the throne room. It was a formal summons, which was unusual now. When he arrived, he found the entire court assembled. Nobles in their finest robes lined the hall. Guards stood at attention. This was official. The queen sat on her throne, regal and distant. For a moment, she looked nothing like the woman who'd held his hand and touched her forehead to his. She was every inch a queen. Taman of Earth, she said in a formal voice. You have served my house for nearly 1 full year. You have protected my daughter. You have honored the life debt of the throne. For this I am grateful. Taman's heart sank. This was it. The dismissal, but Mion continued. Your service has been extraordinary. So extraordinary that I wish to offer you a permanent position in my court. The hall erupted in shocked whispers. Taman stood frozen. I propose, Mion said clearly, that you remain as not just my daughter's guardian, but as my partner in ruling this empire. I offer you the position of prince consort. The whispers became shouts. Nobles turned to each other in disbelief. Deho looked like he'd been struck. This was unprecedented. A humanist prince consort? As the queen's mate? Taman couldn't breathe. She was asking him to marry her. To stay forever. To be Isol's father in truth, not just in practice. It was everything he wanted, and it was impossible. He looked at Mion's face. She was trying to appear calm and regal, but he saw the hope in her eyes, the vulnerability. She was risking everything for him. Her reputation, her standing with the nobles, the stability of her empire, and that was exactly why he couldn't accept. I am honored beyond words, Taman said, his voice somehow steady. But I cannot accept. Mion's face went pale. The court gasped. Even Deho looked surprised. I will not let you sacrifice your people's respect for me, Taman continued. You heard them. They're shocked, angry. If I accept, there will be unrest. Maybe worse. Princess Isol's position will be questioned. Your authority will be undermined. I am the queen, Mion said, her voice shaking slightly. I decide, and I'm deciding for you, Taman interrupted gently. I care about you too much to let you do this. I care about Isol too much to make her life harder. The original agreement was 1 year. I'll honor that. I'll leave when the time comes. Taman, please, I'm sorry, he said, and his voice broke on the words. I'm so sorry. He turned and walked out of the throne room. Behind him, he heard Mion's controlled voice dismissing the court, but he also heard something else. A small choked sound that might have been a sob. Isol found him that night in his quarters. He was packing his few belongings. The princess stood in the doorway, tears streaming down her face. You are leaving, she said. You are leaving us. I have to. You do not have to. Mother asked you to stay. I want you to stay, I know, but sometimes wanting something isn't enough. Taman knelt down to her. Your mother is an amazing queen. She needs a partner who can help her rule without causing problems. That's not me. You are wrong, Isol said fiercely. You are exactly what we need. You make her happy. You make me happy. Nothing else matters. I wish that were true. Isol threw her arms around him, sobbing. Taman held her, his own tears finally falling. He thought he was doing the right thing. But seeing her pain, he wasn't sure anymore. When she finally pulled away, her face was red and puffy. I will never forgive you, she said with all the drama of a heartbroken child. Then she ran from the room. Taman finished packing in silence. Tomorrow, a transport would take him back to the trading station. Back to his ship. Back to his old life. He should be happy. He was getting his freedom back. But all he felt was empty. The transport lifted off at dawn. Taman sat by the window and watched the palace shrink below him. The crystal towers caught the morning light, beautiful and distant. He'd said goodbye to the staff, to the guards he'd trained with. But he hadn't seen Mion or Isul, probably for the best. Goodbyes were already hard enough. His ship was waiting for him at the trading station, exactly as promised. The queen had kept her word. It had been maintained perfectly, fueled and ready to go. Taman walked up the cargo ramp and felt nothing. This was supposed to be coming home. But the ship felt empty and cold. He was checking the navigation systems when his communicator buzzed. A message from the palace, probably some formal farewell from the Queen's office. Taemin almost deleted it without reading, but something made him open it. The message was short, encrypted, and marked urgent. It was from Quan, one of the royal guards he'd become friends with. Emergency. Daeho has taken control of the palace. The Queen and Princess are prisoners. He's calling it protective custody, but we know it's a coup. Military is confused. Many are loyal to Daeho. We need help, please. Taemin read the message 3 times, his hands shaking. A coup. Daeho had waited until Taemin left, then made his move. Mayun and Isul were in danger. He ran to the transport station and found the captain who'd brought him up. I need to go back. Right now. The captain, a weathered Velrathi woman, looked confused. The palace closed all traffic an hour ago. Military lockdown. No ships in or out. I thought it was just exercises, but it's not exercises. It's a coup. I have to get back. Are you insane? Even if I wanted to help you, they'd shoot us down. Taemin looked around the docking bay desperately. Then he saw it. A small maintenance shuttle in the corner, used for station repairs. It was old, barely armed, and probably slow. But it was small enough to slip past sensors if he was lucky and crazy enough. I don't need your help, Taemin said. Thanks for the ride. He ran to the shuttle before anyone could stop him. The controls were universal standard, something he knew well. He fired up the engines and launched before station security realized what was happening. The shuttle wasn't built for atmospheric entry, especially not the hot approach he needed. Warning alarm screamed at him as he pushed the engines too hard. The hull heated up, rattling and groaning. Taemin ignored it all. He had one thought in his mind. Get to them. He came in low over the palace city, dodging surprise defense turrets. Someone was definitely tracking him now, but he was moving too fast for their targeting systems. He crashed the shuttle into the palace gardens, tearing up the glowing plants and leaving a trail of burning vegetation. Taemin grabbed a plasma rifle from the shuttle's emergency kit and ran. He knew the palace layout by heart now. He knew the maintenance tunnels and hidden passages that even most guards didn't know about. That knowledge had seemed useless when he left. Now it might save lives. He found Quan and 3 other loyal guards hiding in a storage room. Their faces lit up when they saw him. You came back, Quan breathed. We did not think— Where are they? Taemin demanded. Royal Tower. Daeho has 50 soldiers guarding them. He's planning a trial at dawn. We all know what that means, a show trial, then execution. Daeho would claim the Queen had become unfit to rule, that he was saving the Empire. Once Myeon and Isul were dead, no one could challenge him. How many guards stayed loyal? Taemin asked. Maybe 20 scattered through the palace. Not enough to fight Daeho's forces directly. We don't need to fight them directly. Taemin's mind raced, thinking like a cargo pilot, not a soldier. We need to get them off balance. Make them confused. Create chaos, he explained his plan. It was crazy, risky, and depended on perfect timing. The guards looked doubtful. This is madness, one of them said. You have a better idea? Taemin asked. They didn't, so they moved. The palace had an old system of service tunnels for maintenance staff. Taemin led them through the dark passages, stopping at key points. They planted explosives at empty storage rooms near guard positions. Not to hurt anyone, but to create confusion. Then Taemin used the palace communication system to send a message on the emergency channel that only royal blood could activate. Except he'd learned months ago that Isul had shown him the override code, thinking it was a game. He broadcasted on all frequencies. This is Taemin. Daeho has betrayed the throne. Any guards loyal to Queen Myeon converge on the royal tower. This is not a drill. The explosives went off in sequence, echoing through the palace. Alarms blared. Guards rushed to respond, thinking they were under attack. In the chaos, Taemin and his small team moved toward the royal tower. They encountered resistance at the main entrance. 8 of Daeho's soldiers blocking the way. Taemin didn't hesitate. He'd trained with these people. He knew how they thought. The fight was brutal but brief. Taemin and his guards fought with desperate energy. They were outnumbered but had surprise on their side. When it was over, 3 of Daeho's soldiers were down, the rest fallen back. But Taemin had taken hits. Burns on his arms, a cut across his ribs. He was bleeding and everything hurt. Didn't matter. Keep moving. More loyal guards joined them as they climbed the tower. Word was spreading. Taemin was back. The crazy human who'd saved the princess twice was fighting for the queen. It inspired others to act. By the time they reached the throne room, Taemin's force had grown to 15.
But Daeho had 40 soldiers inside with him.
The odds were bad. Taemin kicked open the throne room doors anyway. Daeho stood at the center of the room, his hand on Mion's shoulder. She was bound to her own throne. Isil sat at her feet, also bound, her face wet with tears. Both looked exhausted and frightened. When Isil saw Taemin, her eyes went wide. "Taemin." "Let them go," Taemin said, raising his rifle. His team spread out behind him. Daeho smiled coldly. "The human returns, predictable. I knew you would come back if I moved quickly enough." "This was a trap?" Taemin realized. "You planned for me to come back?" "Of course. I knew you would not let them die. Human emotional attachment. So predictable." Daeho drew a blade. "Now I can eliminate all my problems at once. The weak queen, the half-breed heir, and the human corruption that poisoned our court. I am the queen," Mion shouted. "And I command you to stand down." "You have no authority here anymore," Daeho said. "The court has voted. You are unfit to rule. Liar," Quan yelled. "The court votes at dawn. You have taken power illegally." Daeho shrugged. "A minor detail. By dawn it will not matter." Taemin's rifle was trained on Daeho, but the advisor was too close to Mion. One wrong move and he could hurt her. The other soldiers in the room had their weapons raised. "A standoff. You cannot win this," Daeho said to Taemin. "Even if you kill me, my soldiers will kill you all. Including them." He gestured to Mion and Isul. "Maybe," Taemin admitted. "But you'll be dead too. That work for you?" For the first time, uncertainty crossed Daeho's face. Then Isul did something that changed everything. The little princess, who'd been sitting quietly, suddenly twisted and bit Daeho's leg. Hard. Daeho jerked away in surprise and pain. In that split second, Mion threw herself sideways off the throne, away from him. Taemin fired. His shot hit Daeho's shoulder, spinning the advisor around. Chaos erupted. The throne room exploded into fighting. Taemin ran toward Mion and Isul, dodging plasma bolts. He reached them and cut their bindings with a knife. Mion grabbed his face. "You came back," she gasped. "Always," he said. Then he saw Isul's hand move to her chest. She touched something there, hidden under her robes. "A small device Father showed me," she said, "before he died. In case of emergency." She pressed the device. Immediately, a high-pitched tone filled the room, broadcasting on frequencies Taemin couldn't hear but that the Velrathi clearly could. It was the royal emergency beacon. Only direct royalty could activate it. Throughout the planet, every loyal military unit heard that beacon. They knew exactly where the princess was, and they knew she was in danger. The fighting in the throne room slowed as Daeho's soldiers realized what had happened. Their coup had failed. The real military was coming, and they had been caught betraying the throne. Some of them dropped their weapons immediately. Others tried to flee. Daeho, wounded and bleeding, stared at Isul with disbelief. "You clever child," he whispered. Then he collapsed. 2 minutes later, the throne room doors burst open and elite military units poured in. The coup was over. Taemin woke to the now familiar sight of the medical wing ceiling. Third time. He was definitely making this a habit. His whole body ached, wrapped in bandages and hooked to monitors. But he was alive. A small weight rested against his side. He looked down and saw Princess Isil curled up in the medical bed with him, fast asleep. Her hand gripped his shirt like she was afraid he'd disappear if she let go. The door opened softly and Queen Mion entered. She looked exhausted, her robes wrinkled, her hair not perfectly arranged like usual. But she was safe. That was all that mattered. "You should not be awake yet," she said quietly, moving to his bedside. "The doctor said you pushed your body far beyond safe limits. Is Daeho in custody? He will stand trial for treason." Mion sat in the chair beside the bed, careful not to wake her daughter. His coup had support from conservative nobles, but when the military saw what he had done, that support vanished. "No one wants to be associated with him now." "Good. Why did you come back?" Mion asked softly. "You were safe. You were free. You could have gone anywhere in the galaxy." Taemin looked at Isul's sleeping face, then at Mion. "Because you needed me. Both of you. That's all that mattered. You could have died." "Yeah, but I didn't." Mion's eyes filled with tears. She took his hand in both of hers. "When I heard you had come back, that you were fighting through the palace to reach us, I thought my heart would stop. And I realized something. What? That I was a fool. I let you leave because I was afraid of what the court would think. I was afraid of causing instability, but almost losing you made me understand that none of that matters. Not compared to you. Taman squeezed her hand. The court saw you risk your life to save the throne, again. Mion smiled through her tears. You have become something of a legend in the last few days. The human who came back. The guards are calling you the loyal one. Even the conservative nobles who opposed you before are singing your praises. That seems convenient. Very convenient. It seems your dramatic rescue has solved our political problems. Mion leaned closer. The court is now asking me when I will make you prince consort. They think I am being too slow about it. Taman laughed, then winced because it hurt his ribs. Really? Really? Apparently refusing to marry you would now be seen as insulting the human who saved us all. Her expression turned serious. But I do not ask because of politics. I ask because I love you. I think I have loved you since you shared your air with my daughter in space. I just did not let myself admit it. I love you too, Taman said. Both of you. Then stay. Not because of a debt. Not because of duty. Stay because this is your home now. Because we are your family. Before Taman could answer, Isolde stirred. She opened her eyes and looked up at him. Her face broke into the biggest smile he'd ever seen. You stayed, she whispered. Yeah, kid, I stayed. She sat up and hugged him carefully, mindful of his injuries. Does this mean you will be my father? My real father? Taman looked at Mion, who nodded with tears in her eyes. He looked back at Isolde. If you want me to be. I do. Can I call you Appa? I'd like that. Isolde squealed with joy and hugged him tighter. Mion joined the embrace, and for a long moment they just held each other. A queen, a princess, and a cargo pilot. The strangest family in the galaxy. But family nonetheless. The days that followed were busy. Taman recovered slowly, though the doctors were amazed at how stubborn humans could be. Isolde barely left his side, chattering about everything and nothing, making plans for when he was better. The court prepared for the formal ceremonies. Deho's trial was swift. He was found guilty of treason and exiled to a prison colony on the Empire's edge. His co-conspirators received lesser sentences. The conservative faction that had supported him quietly disappeared from court politics. 3 weeks after the coup, Taman stood in the throne room again. But this time it was filled with celebration, not confrontation. Nobles in their finest robes lined the hall. The royal guard stood at attention in ceremonial armor. Music played softly. Taman wore robes that Mion had chosen for him. They were Velrathi style but adapted for human proportions, mixing both cultures. He felt like an imposter dressed up for a play. But Mion had insisted. The ceremony was long and involved many traditions that Taman didn't fully understand. There were speeches in formal Velrathian oaths that he repeated carefully. But the important part was simple. Mion placed a silver circlet on his head, the mark of a prince consort. By the authority of the throne and the will of our people, I name you Taman, Prince Consort of the Velrathi Empire, partner to the Queen, guardian of the air, member of our royal house, the court cheered. Isolde, standing beside the throne in her own formal robes, beamed with pride. Taman looked out at all the faces. Nobles who had once questioned him. Guards he'd trained with. Staff who'd become friends. Quan grinning like an idiot. This was real. This was happening. Thank you, he said simply. I'll try not to mess it up. The court laughed. Mion smiled and took his hand. A public gesture, acknowledging their bond before everyone. That night after the ceremonies and celebrations, Taman found himself in the palace gardens. The same gardens where he'd first talked with Mion about human governments and decision-making. It felt like a lifetime ago. In some ways it was. Mion found him there as he knew she would. She was no longer in her ceremonial robes, but in a simple dress. Just a woman, not a queen. Regretting your choice already? She asked with a slight smile. No, just thinking about how strange life is. A year ago I was hauling cargo and drinking bad coffee on space stations. Now I'm a prince. You are more than that. Mion took his hand. You are the person who saved my daughter without thinking of reward. Who stood by us when it was dangerous. Who came back when you could have fled. You are exactly who we need. I'm still going to make mistakes. I don't know how to be royal. Then be yourself. That is what we need. She leaned against him. Besides, you have time to learn. A lifetime if you wish. A lifetime sounds good, Taman said. They stood together in the garden, watching the glowing plants sway in the breeze. In the distance, Taman could see the lights of the city spreading to the horizon. So many lives, so much responsibility. It should have been terrifying, but he had Mion beside him. He had Isol, who would burst into his room tomorrow morning demanding he read her stories. He had friends among the guards and staff. He had purpose. The next morning, Isol did exactly what he expected. She bounded into his quarters before dawn, full of energy. Appa.
Appa, come see.
They brought your ship. Taman followed her to the palace hangar. There, sitting among the royal vessels, was his old cargo ship. It looked small and battered next to the sleek Velrathi ships, but it had been cleaned and maintained perfectly. I asked Mother to keep it here, Isol explained, so we can fly it sometimes. She said on rest days, we can be a normal family and go on cargo runs together. Taman looked at his ship, then at the happy little girl beside him. A normal family. He almost laughed at the absurdity. A human cargo pilot, an alien queen, and a princess, going on cargo runs for fun. But maybe that was exactly what normal meant for them. I think that sounds perfect, he said. Later that day, Taman stood on a balcony overlooking the city. He was supposed to be studying reports about trade agreements, prince consort duties. But instead, he found himself thinking about the chain of events that led here. One split-second decision to help a child in danger. That was all it took to change everything. He could have calculated the risks and chosen safety. But he'd acted on instinct, on the simple human impulse to help someone in need. And that impulse had given him a family, a home, and a purpose beyond anything he'd imagined. Mion joined him on the balcony, sliding an arm around his waist. The trade minister is waiting for you. Tell him I'm thinking deep political thoughts. You are thinking about how you got here, are you not? How did you know? Because I think about it too. How one moment of crisis brought you to us. How you changed everything. She kissed his cheek. The galaxy is vast and strange, full of different species and cultures. But sometimes the most important connections happen in an instant. Yeah, Taman agreed. Sometimes all it takes is one choice to help someone. One moment of not thinking about the consequences. That is very human of you. I'll take that as a compliment. It is. Your humanity is what saved us. Your instinct to act, to protect, to come back even when it seemed impossible. That is your gift. Below them, the city buzzed with life. Above them, stars were beginning to appear in the evening sky. Somewhere out there, cargo ships were running routes between stations. Other pilots were drinking bad coffee and living quiet, simple lives. Taman didn't regret leaving that behind. Not for a second, Isol's voice called from inside. Appa, are you coming? It is story time. Coming, he called back. He took one last look at the stars, then turned to follow me on inside. A year ago, he'd been alone, drifting through space without real connections. Now he had everything that mattered. A daughter who loved him. A partner who understood him. A purpose that felt meaningful, all because he'd seen a child in danger and decided to help. Sometimes the most human thing you can do is also the most important. Not thinking, not calculating, just acting on that simple instinct to reach.